tuning in to Local News Live. That was a perfect timing on a stop by that song, Tall Man Strut by Love Shadow, copyright 2020, licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial 3.0 license. Like I said, you are tuned in to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media, a community service brought to you in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate, our local branch of the larger Advocate, who is covering news all over Louisiana, bringing us up-to-date and accurate information according to journalistic standards and ethics. And we are thankful every morning to be able to bring this to you, but we could not do it without the assist from our dedicated volunteers like Mr. Bruce Cohen, who is, I believe, hitting a record number of news reads this morning. I don't know what that number is up to, but I'm certain that it's a record. Bruce, what do you think?
Yeah, it's got to be over, a million. I don't know.
That seems like it may be exaggerated, but we're just going to say it's a record anyway. And Bruce, thank you so much. I am going to listen on Cypress.
All right, I'll go with the record. It's just a record. We'll decide it as that. Well, good morning, Acadiana. I'm more than happy to be here to deliver the news, to local news and state news to you every morning. And later in the broadcast, we'll talk about how you can become a volunteer if you wish to. Well, we'll start off this morning with the Lafayette Fire and Police Departments to enforce mask mandate by Claire Taylor, staff writer. Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory said he intends for fire and police personnel to enforce the governor's order, which went into effect Monday, requiring people to wear a mask in businesses and other public buildings, as well as outdoors when they cannot social distance. But by Monday evening, Lafayette officials were still working out what their role is in enforcing the order. Until Monday, only employees of a business who had direct contact with customers were required to wear a covering over their mouth and nose to help reduce the spread of the coronavirus. On Saturday, citing skyrocketing cases and hospitalizations due to COVID-19, Governor John Bel Edwards ordered everyone to wear masks starting Monday morning. He also restricted bars from serving food or alcohol for on-premises consumption. As long as the order is in effect, we will enforce it to the best of our ability with assistance from the State Fire Marshal's Office, Jamie Angel, Chief Communications Officer with the Lafayette Consolidated Government, said Monday morning. An LCG news release from Angel stated the fire and police departments will continue conducting compliance checks at local businesses, issuing warnings to those not in compliance. If a business is reported or found in violation a second time, the news release states, the business is referred to the State Fire Marshal's Office and Louisiana Department of Health for enforcement and could be issued a citation, possibly by the Lafayette Police Department. If a business still does not comply, additional enforcement steps could be taken, including shutting off electricity. Regarding the new mask mandate for customers effective Monday, a business owner or his employees have the first responsibility of enforcement. Edwards added that businesses must require visitors to wear a mask unless the individual claims to have a medical condition that would be aggravated by the mask. If the customer refuses, the business owner or employees are supposed to ask the customer to leave. If the customer refuses, they can be charged with trespassing. If a business does not require customers to wear masks, the business owner can be cited, Edwards said. Enforcement, the governor said during a media availability on Monday, falls primarily on the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Louisiana Department of Health and State Police. Violation of the governor's proclamation is a misdemeanor offense. Ashley Rodrigue, Public Affairs Director for the State Fire Marshal's Office, said Monday her agency, along with the health department and local fire departments and the prevention bureaus, including the Lafayette Police Department, are responsible for different areas of enforcement, from crowd limits to social distancing, face mask compliance, and sanitation problems. If the local fire departments receive a complaint they can handle, They log it into a statewide system used by the State Fire Marshal's Office and Health Department, Rodriguez said. Otherwise, they can refer the complaint to the regional office of the State Fire Marshal's Office, she said. Prior to Monday, the Lafayette Fire Department has primarily checked bars for compliance while also handling a handful of complaints, according to public records obtained by the Acadiana Advocate. The Lafayette Police Department has been conducting compliance checks on other businesses, primarily restaurants, issuing verbal warnings when workers are not wearing masks, the documents show. Registrar, voter complaints unfounded. Hundreds registered to wrong party, unable to cast ballots. By Claire Taylor, staff writer. Lafayette election officials received about 250 calls Saturday, most of them from people complaining that they couldn't vote for the candidate of their choice in the closed primary presidential preference election. All the problems were because the individuals were registered with one political party and wanted to vote for a candidate in the other political party, Lafayette Parish Registrar of Voters Charlene Menard said on Monday. Of all the phone calls we received, she said, not one was our error. During a closed primary election, voters registered as Republicans can only vote for Republicans, and voters registered as Democrats can only vote for Democrats. This happens every 4 years in Louisiana just before presidential elections. A Lafayette Parish woman wearing a President Donald Trump hat posted a video on Facebook on Saturday saying she was not allowed to vote and putting the blame on election officials alleging corruption. Menard and Clerk of Court Louis Perret both contacted the woman, providing her with her voter registration information that shows she is registered as a Democrat. She originally was registered as a Democrat, switched it to Republican around 2011, then got online and switched her voter registration back to Democrat, they said. As recently as April, she updated her address and kept her registration as a Democrat, Perret said. Her allegations are completely baseless and false, he added. About 20 voters visited the registrar's office on Monday morning to change their party affiliation, Menard said, primarily from Democrat to Republican. It's not unusual to get 200 complaints during such a closed primary election, she added. Menard asked voters to be informed of what will be on their ballot before the November 3rd presidential election because there will be ballot blackouts once again for Republican Executive Committee, Lafayette City Marshal, judges, justices of the peace, and constables. SLCC grads to parade through campus. Ceremony set for Thursday and Friday by Ken Stickney, staff writer. Walking at graduation is so 2019. Spring 2020 graduates at South Louisiana Community College will take their wheels to the campus Thursday and Friday, meandering down Devil Court Street and through a parking area before picking up their diploma jackets and some hearty congratulations. We believe in celebrating our students' achievements, said Interim Chancellor Vincent June. We sent them a beautiful SLCC commencement box with their degree, honor cord, and other SLCC trinkets. We sent them official transcripts as well. There's nice memorabilia in that box. But June said the two-year school also surveyed graduates about how they wanted to mark graduation, and the settled upon means was with the ride through the campus and the possibility of a combined spring-fall graduation at a later date. With COVID hitting in March and transitioning remotely, we were always thinking about what we wanted to acknowledge our students' achievements, June said. Students favored an in-person ceremony, but the threat of COVID-19 loomed over those plans. So more than 400 students who've completed their programs will take the drive at designated times on Thursday and Friday. Invitations have been mailed to graduates with details. Graduates, one per vehicle, can ride with family members and friends, one regular passenger vehicle only, past signage, and waving faculty members who will offer their congratulations. No buildings will be open on campus, and there will be no pedestrian traffic allowed. Graduation gowns are optional. But June said the event will be fun and should signal respect for what students have accomplished, capped by a most unusual final semester. SLCC will live stream the event on its website for family and friends who cannot be at the ceremony. Oil Center Bank robbed by Claire Taylor staff writer. One person is in custody following a robbery of a bank in Lafayette's Oil Center. The Hancock Whitney Bank in the 200 block of Audubon Drive was robbed Monday morning. Sergeant Wayne Griffin, public information officer with the Lafayette Police Department, said officers received information on the suspect's vehicle and pursued it. They caught up with the vehicle in the Tucson-Scott area. One of the individuals in the vehicle is the suspect in the robbery, Griffin said. That person, he said, was in custody Monday evening, but had not been booked into jail. The second person was not involved in the robbery, Griffin said. Police are not releasing the name of the suspect at this time. No one was injured. The incident remains under investigation. JCPenney officials, Acadiana Mall store won't close by Adam Daigle, Acadiana business editor. 3 JCPenney stores in Louisiana, including the one in the Acadiana Mall, will remain open. The Lafayette store had been one of 137 the troubled retailer had planned to close, along with stores in Shreveport and Metairie. Now the company's website indicates no Louisiana stores will close. A company spokesperson did not respond to questions about when the decision was made or how many are employed at the Lafayette store, which was slated to close September 27th. As JCPenney continues to evaluate its retail footprint and make strategic decisions for the future of the business, some stores have been removed from the previously announced list of closures and will remain open, including our store at Acadiana Mall, a company statement read. We look forward to continue serving our customers in Lafayette with many safety precautions in place. The company put the 61,256 square foot store on its list of 154 locations to close on June 4th as the company moves to Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. The company even installed banners on the exterior of the building that read the store would close and begin a liquidation sale June 17th. It later knocked 17 stores off the closing list, including the Shreveport store. In a filing in early June, company officials said sales were down by $1.4 billion, or 56%, in the first quarter. Now we turn to our first public service announcements for the morning. Camp Unique, Dreams Foundation. Every summer, the Dreams Foundation of Acadiana hosts the greatest camp of all, Camp Unique. Camp Unique is suited for individuals with special needs. Camp Unique is being held this week, July 13th through the 17th, for ages 5 to 13, and next week, July 20th through the 24th, for ages 14 and up. The fee will be $75 per person, and the theme this year is peace and love. All Camp Unique sessions will be held at Lark's Acadian Village. Individuals of all ages have a blast participating in a camp that is specifically tailored to them. They get the opportunity to take part in activities such as art, fitness, karaoke, music, and dance, as well as getting a Camp Unique t-shirt and a snack every day. A highlight of Camp Unique this year will be the storytelling session by Chief Greyhawk Perkins, commented Dreams Foundation Executive Director Danielle Watkins. As a recognized expert on Native American and American colonial history, Perkins has inspired many audiences over the years, sharing tales of Asian cultures as a tribal storyteller and as a teacher of various subjects in Louisiana's school system. The registration form for Camp Unique can be found on the Dreams Foundation of Acadiana website. That's dreamsfoundationaca.org. Volunteers are also being sought at this time, so if you're interested in volunteering, you can complete the application on the Dreams website under the Volunteer tab. For more information about Camp Unique, please contact Danielle Watkins by email at Danielle, and that's spelled D as in daughter, ONIELLE at dreamsfoundationaca.org. or you can simply call 337-962-1609. That number again, 337-962-1609. The AOC teams up with the United Way of Acadiana for Learn United. United Way of Acadiana has teamed up with AOC and other local educational groups for Learn United, bridging the digital gap to provide educational resources for households that don't have internet but do have a television. The Learn United program airs weekdays from 8 to 2 on AOC 2, Cox 16, LUS 4, and streaming at aocinc.org/watch. For the daily schedules and to submit content to the program, visit the United Way of Acadiana website. That's unitedwayofacadiana.org/learn-united. Okay, getting back into the news. Of course, COVID-related news, COVID-19, coronavirus, the latest. Louisiana case total shatters weekly record. Despite a rapid rise, local leaders remain lukewarm on state mask order by Yusuf Radad and Sam Carlin, staff writers. Louisiana neared 80,000 coronavirus infections on Monday, following a rapid rise in cases and hospitalizations this month, a trend that has raised alarms for state and federal leaders, prompting a statewide face covering order, in which comes ahead of a Tuesday visit from Vice President Mike Pence. Governor John Bel Edwards' order requiring people to wear face coverings in businesses and other public areas went into effect Monday for most of the state, but it was met by a steady drumbeat of parish and city leaders who expressed discomfort with the new requirement. Meanwhile, one of the three parishes that was allowed to opt out of the mandate because of low incidence levels of the virus decided to adhere to Edwards' order was Feliciana Parish President Kenny Harvard said his parish will go along with the mandate. State leaders have been troubled by the growth in new cases that saw Louisiana surpass its previous high for new weekly cases since late March. April saw some of the deadliest weeks of the outbreak, but also a dramatic drop in hospital admissions and overall cases as the state flattened the curve of infections following a stay-at-home order. Look at the numbers for yourself and see the resurgence of this virus here in Louisiana and elsewhere, Edwards said at a news conference on Monday with FEMA Administrator Peter Gaynor. Louisiana logged more than 13,000 new coronavirus cases this past week, shattering the previous weekly record of 11,047 cases set in the first week of April. The hotspot Acadiana region for the fifth day in a row led the state with the most daily cases and accounted for a quarter of the state hospitalizations in the past 2 weeks. The state is testing far more now than in April, but the share of tests coming back positive has risen from under 5% in the phase 1 of reopening in May to nearly 10% over the past week. That means the rise in cases cannot be explained entirely by more tests being conducted. And while young people are contracting the virus at a higher rate as of late, hospitalizations have marched steadily upward. The number rose again Monday to more than 1,300, the highest point since May 11th. The spike in new cases, particularly in Baton Rouge, also drew concerns from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, which tapped the capital city to roll out at least 5,000 free tests each day. Pence plans to discuss the state's response to the pandemic when he comes to Baton Rouge and meets with the governor on Tuesday, as today, as well as holds a roundtable with higher education leaders at LSU to promote colleges resuming in the fall. The governor has urged people to comply with the face mask rule and not force the state to write citations to the businesses for violating. According to his executive order, citations would be written only to businesses or organizations, excluding religious organizations, if they fail to require patrons and staff to wear face coverings. That task of issuing citations falls largely on State Fire Marshal Butch Browning's office. The local law enforcement would become involved if a person refused to wear a face covering and then refused to leave a business when asked, at which point the person could be cited for trespassing. Those state agencies such as the Department of Health and the State Fire Marshal's Office lack the ability to require municipalities and parishes to fall in line with the mask order. They can enforce the governor's order within businesses and public areas. If a business is either not providing a response or outright saying they're not going to be doing this, they will come into our venue, said Fire Marshal's Office spokeswoman Ashley Rodriguez. Browning's office, along with Health Department and Office of Alcohol and Tobacco Control officials, visited nearly 4,000 businesses before the mask mandate went into effect, checking on things like social distancing and sanitation. The agencies only issued warnings, however, and did not dole out any citations. Despite the uptick in new cases, the governor's face mask mandate was met with opposition from some local governments, some who say they won't ask local law enforcement to crack down on the requirement. Livingston Parish President Elaine Ricks, a Republican, said Monday his parish won't support strict enforcement of the governor's order, but he acknowledged businesses and the public still have to follow the state mandate. I'm not going to be part of enforcing any penalties on our residents, Ricks said. I want to encourage people to understand we're following the governor's order and that they need to wear a mask when he's told them they need to wear a mask. Municipalities that have added face covering requirements but haven't issued citations essentially have taken a similar approach to Livingston Parish, Rick said. I'm in no way telling people to not wear a mask, he said. The rate of infection in Rick's parish is just more than 400 cases per 100,000 residents, or more than 4 times the rate needed to gain an exemption from the state order. A recent rise brought its total cases to more than 1,550 after recording 384 new infections in the past week. The Washita Parish Sheriff's Office in Northeast Louisiana also said it would not enforce the mandate at the local level, according to Washita Citizen, though the bulk of enforcement falls on the fire marshal. Edwards said people need to do what's right, which is wearing a mask, which he called a very minor adjustment to avoid going back to phase 1 of reopening or even another stay-at-home order. We need that from leaders at all levels, Edwards said. We need it from business leaders, faith leaders, political leaders, and obviously there is a mandate now because, quite frankly, we weren't getting the compliance we needed before. Only 3 parishes, West Feliciana, Grant, and Red River, were given the ability to opt out of the governor's order because their caseloads fell under a threshold of fewer than 100 cases per 100,000 people over 2 weeks. That list of parishes will be updated every 2 weeks. Harvard, the Republican president of West Feliciana Parish and longtime friend of Edwards, said the parish will follow the state's guidelines, noting it's largely up to the state fire marshal to enforce it. He added that transfers of infected parish prisoners to Angola, which is in effect his district, has masked the low number of cases in the community. We're going to let the state fire marshal enforce whatever they're likely to enforce, Harvard said, adding he has met with business owners and that most people in his parish wear masks in businesses anyways. The mayor of Baker also said its police force won't enforce the governor's mask mandate, while also stressing that people should wear face coverings while around others, among other precautions. Baker, along with other Baton Rouge suburbs, declined to enforce a similar mask order Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome issued earlier this month. Baton Rouge has taken a light touch approach to carry out its face covering mandate after joining New Orleans and Jefferson Parish, which have mainly issued warnings to businesses and those not following local rules. Public health officials in the governor's office has stressed the importance of wearing face coverings, especially in indoor areas where keeping at a 6-foot distance from others is difficult. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says wearing a face covering reduces the chances of spreading respiratory droplets carrying the virus that can spread to others from coughing, talking, or even breathing. Precaution is especially important, they said, because people can infect others without showing symptoms of the coronavirus-borne illness, COVID-19. Okay, we're going to go back into our public service announcements for the morning. Keeping Calm with COVID hotline. If you are feeling overwhelmed with stress, fear, and anxiety about the uncertainty surrounding a public health emergency, there is a special Keeping Calm through COVID hotline you can call. This connects you to trained compassionate counselors who can offer support and who can direct you to mental health and substance abuse counseling services in our area. Trained counselors are available 24/7 and all calls are confidential. If you need the service, please call 1-866-310-7977. Again, that's 866-310-7977. Locally, if you call 311, you can stop the spread. Call instead, #stop the spread. So call 311 to get the latest COVID-19 updates and information. Call centers with volunteers and medical professionals are active 24/7 to answer your questions about COVID-19 and to determine if you need to get screened. You may also call 311 and press option 2 if you're a business owner, employee, or looking for a job to get information about applying for a small business recovery loan, apply for unemployment benefits, and related programs. Again, we're nearing the half-hour mark, so usually we do the day in history, the zodiac, or horoscope, it's like to refer to it as, and the funerals in the Acadiana area today. Looking at the day in history, today is Tuesday, July 14th, the 196th day of 2020. There are potentially 170 shopping days left in the year. Today's highlight in history: on July 14th, 2016, terror struck Bastille Day celebrations in the French Riviera city of Nice as a large truck plowed into a festive crowd, killing 86 people in an attack claimed by Islamic State extremists. The driver was shot dead by police. On this date in 1789, in an event symbolizing the start of the French Revolution, citizens of Paris stormed the Bastille prison and released the 7 prisoners inside. That's why today is cited in France as Bastille Day. In 1798, Congress passed the Sedition Act, making it a federal crime to publish false, scandalous, or malicious writings about the United States government. In 1865, the Matterhorn, straddling Italy and Switzerland, was submitted as a 7-member rope party led by British climber Edward Whymper Winch the Peak. 4 members of the party fell to the death during their descent. Whymper and 2 guides survived. Also in this date, in 1921, Italian-born anarchist Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti were convicted in Dedham, Massachusetts, of murdering a shoe company paymaster and his guard. Sacco and Vanzetti were executed 6 years later. Also on this date, in 1960, British researcher Jane Goodall arrived at the Gombe Stream Reserve and the Tanganyika territory in present-day Tanzania to begin her famous study of chimpanzees in the wild. In 1980, the Republican National Convention opened in Detroit, where nominee apparent Ronald Reagan told a welcoming rally he and his supporters were determined to make America great again. Where have we heard that, folks? 2009, disgraced financier Bernard Madoff arrived at the Butner Federal Correctional Complex in North Carolina to begin serving a 150-year sentence for his massive Ponzi scheme. In 2013, thousands of demonstrators across the country protested a Florida jury's decision the day before it declared George Zimmerman in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin. In 2014, the Church of England voted overwhelmingly in favor of allowing women to become bishops. 10 years ago, an Iranian nuclear scientist who disappeared a year earlier headed back to Tehran, telling Iranian state media that he had been abducted by CIA agents. The U.S. said Shahram Amireh was a willing defector who changed his mind. 5 years ago, world powers and Iran struck a deal to curb Iran's nuclear program in exchange for relief from international sanctions. 1 year ago, injecting race into his criticism of liberal Democrats, President Donald Trump tweeted that 4 congresswomen of color should go back to their broken and crime-infested countries they came from. All of the women were American citizens, and 3 were born in the United States. Looking at today's birthdays, actress Nancy Olsen is 92. Former football player and actor Rosie Greer is 88. Music company executive Tommy Mottola is 72. Actor Jerry Hauser is 68. Movie producer Scott Rudin is 62. Actress Jane Lynch is 60. Actor Jackie Earle Haley is 59. Actor Matthew Scott is 54. Rock singer-musician Tanya Donnelly is 54. Former child actress Missy Gold is 50. Olympic gold medal snowboarder Ross is 49. Rhythm and blues singer Tamika Cottle from Escape is 45. And actress Phoebe Waller-Bridge is 35 years old today. Phoebe Waller-Bridge became famous or well-known in the last couple of years because of her TV series Fleabag. And the funerals today in the Acadiana area. Well, let's do this. Let's go to the zodiac first, because it's usually what I do after the day in history. We'll go to the zodiac. Cancer. Your ideas for fundraising and problem solving will result in popularity and leadership. Delegate what you cannot handle to make the most of your talents and skills. A list back up. Leo, you'll get emotional if someone close to you doesn't share your opinions or feelings. Try to see his or her side and be willing to compromise to avoid a stalemate. Leos, you get emotional if someone close to you doesn't share your opinions or feelings. Try to see his or her side and be willing to compromise to avoid a stalemate. Virgo, my birth sign, let go of the past to make room for what's to come. Learning will proceed quickly, and your peers will offer sound advice. Added discipline will help you quit a bad habit. Libra, emotions will surface regarding a professional or legal matter. A suggestion will be valid but difficult to accept. Do what you can. Don't let anyone pressure you. Scorpio, you will find it challenging to keep the peace with someone inconsistent or emotionally unstable. Give him or her space and go about your business. Confrontations will lead to alienation. Sagittarius, look inward and simplify your life by getting back to basics. Think twice before you take action based on an unfounded assumption. Health problems due to carelessness are apparent. Capricorn, if you'll attract attention if you do your part to bring about a much needed change in your community or household. Your insight and compassion will be appreciated. Aquarius, a home improvement project will brighten your day. Make changes that will help you further a skill or talent you want to pursue. Self-improvement is featured and will fetch compliments. Pisces, don't venture out if it isn't necessary. Taking any sort of risk will lead to regret. Spend time making personal improvements instead of trying to change others. A change of heart is apparent. Aries, don't overspend on entertainment or luxury items. Pour your energy into something worthwhile. Cut your overhead and look for diverse ways to use your skills to bring in additional cash. Taurus, an emotional move may be stressful, but at the same time beneficial. Jump at any opportunity. Don't worry about what's required. Just get busy and don't look back. And finally, Geminis. Your involvement in secret activities will not go as planned. Someone will offer false information to mislead you. A joint venture is a bad idea. Do your own thing. And as always, the horoscope is an entertainment feature, not based on scientific fact. And looking at the funerals in the Kittyana area today, Dorothea Thurmond at the First United Methodist Church, or FUMC in Lafayette at 5 p.m. All right, getting back into our news for the day. Face masks for students. Bessie President expects deep discussions when board sets safety standards by Wilson tells staff writer. The president of the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education said Monday she expects deep discussions today on face masks when the board spells out minimum safety standards for the reopening of public schools. Sandy Holloway, president of the board, also said panel members are getting heavy input from the public in advance of the meeting, which is set for 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday. We have received hundreds of emails from our constituents across the state, Holloway said. The issue surfaced during a 3.5-hour meeting of the House Education Committee on a wide range of volatile topics surrounding schools, including how far the state should go in setting rules for face coverings. The State Department of Education, in recommendations released Friday evening, stopped just short of mandating the use of masks. The agency is recommending that Bessie adopt a rule that says while in school, all adults and students in grades 3 through 12 must wear a face covering to the greatest extent possible and practical within the local community context. State Superintendent of Education, Kate Brumley, said the language means masks should be worn while also leaving some flexibility for local school officials. The issue has turned into something of a political flashpoint, with backers arguing that masks are a key part of combating the spread of the virus and opponents questioning their value. Governor John Bel Edwards on Saturday ordered the use of face masks for those 8 years and older while in public, which would take precedence over any Bessie standard if it is still in effect when classes resume in early to mid-August. Minimum standards adopted by Bessie then would have to be followed by local school districts, which will submit their own plans to state education officials. Face masks are among a host of issues that have educators, parents, and students on edge. It will be quite a monumental task, Brumley said of the upcoming school year. It will be a year like any other. An electronic survey of teachers and others showed that 58% are not comfortable with their children returning to schools, according to the Louisiana Federation of Teachers, one of the state's 2 teacher unions. Another key challenge is learning gaps, especially since classrooms closed in March during the early stages of the pandemic. Brumley said the gaps are why local school districts should do diagnostic tests when students return to school, especially in math and reading. The fact many school districts plan to rely on both remote and in-person instruction, and the knowledge that schools may be forced to rely solely on remote learning if the virus conditions worsen, are also major concerns. I cannot confidently tell you that moving to a fully online model will produce the same result as having a child in front of a teacher every day, Brumley told lawmakers. Getting students to and from public schools is another hurdle. Transportation is one of the most significant challenges of the entire plan, Brumley said. Louisiana is in phase 2 for reopening its economy, which means school buses have to be limited to 50% of capacity. Brumley told the committee that buses typically have limits of between 50 and 60 students, or it's 50 and 80 students, which he said raises questions on whether districts will have to use multiple runs or take other steps to adhere to the rules. If the state moves to phase 3 when schools reopen, the bus capacity would rise to 75%, including adults. Hopefully, if we're able to get to phase 3, that is really a game changer in the occupancy of the bus, Brumley said. Meanwhile, the executive director of the Louisiana High School Athletic Association said his group will follow religiously Edwards' directives on the coronavirus pandemic and governing resumption of athletics. Eddie Bonine, who leads the Lafayette High School Athletics Association, also appeared before the House Education Committee. We have got to get to phase 4 to play football, Bonine told lawmakers, meaning the virus would have to be enough control to allow for football with helmet and shoulder pads, full contact scrimmages, and games. School leaders are crafting plans for the school year, with many districts opting for having young students return to classrooms, while older students rely on remote learning, at least at the start of the school year. Bonine said what the football season will look like all depends on when we get students back to school. Studies, deaths due to other causes up during outbreak by Emily Woodruff, staff writer. In mid-April, as the surge of coronavirus patients into New Orleans hospitals started to ease, emergency room doctor James Aiken started noticing something troubling. The hospital was getting more calls from paramedics who were finding residents dead in their homes. Before COVID-19, a couple of calls like that would come in per day, said Aiken, an associate professor at LSU Health Sciences Center, who also works in the ER at University Medical Center. A month and a half into the pandemic, they were getting 9 or 10 daily. We began to wonder, said Aiken, were these patients who didn't want to go to the hospital because they saw it as a death zone? 2 new studies published in the Journal of the American Medical Association this month offer early data suggesting that Aiken's intuition was correct. Using data from across the U.S., researchers published the findings that demonstrate COVID-19 deaths and a fear of seeking care for other ailments have led to more than many deaths than normal. The studies are an early indication that the true death toll of the pandemic may be far higher than the figures appearing on the coronavirus databases released by Louisiana and other states. Around the country, 140,700 more people have died from March 1st through June 27th than expected based on average deaths in previous years, but only about 80% of those can be directly attributed to the coronavirus, according to study author Dan Weinberger and I have a tough one with this, folks. Epidemiologist, there we go, at the Yale School of Public Health. The remaining 26,000 people are part of the daily collateral of being sick and vulnerable during the pandemic. In Louisiana, 3,800 more people have died during that period than what would normally be expected based on averages from the last 6 years, according to early analysis of death data. Of those, COVID-19 accounts for a staggering 2,848 deaths, according to an updated analysis by Yale School of Public Health, originally published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Internal Medicine, that reviewed data from March 1st to June 27th of this year. The Louisiana Department of Health reported 3,077 COVID-19 deaths on June 27th. The slight difference may be due to the fluctuation of classifications because of the complicated nature of death investigations, which can require extensive lab work and autopsies. The health department keeps track of all deaths, but typically that information is not finalized until weeks or months after the death occurs, said Dr. Joe Cantor, an assistant state officer with the Louisiana Department of Health. The study, led by Weinberger, adjusted for reporting delays based on how many weeks passed since the death occurred. Taking population into account, Louisiana has the 5th highest number of excess deaths per 100,000 people of any state, behind only New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island. That leaves about 1,000 deaths unexplained by coronavirus. Some of those are probably COVID deaths that were not recorded, said Weinberger. Could also be deaths due to things like people avoiding going to the ER for heart attack or stroke. Considering the drawn-out process of sending patients to the coroner and classifying those deaths, there is a lag in data reporting that means these numbers represent a minimum of deaths that would likely change as more data comes in, said Weinberger. There are almost certainly more deaths occurring than what is showing up on the state dashboard, said Weinberger. More would be expected to come in, but until each death is certified by the respective coroner's office, we don't know exactly how many more, said Cantor. When Aiken first noticed fewer heart attack and stroke patients and an increase in patients dying before reaching the hospital, he started canvassing others. The same was true at Tulane Medical Center, said Dr. Raj Adkiri, medical director of the emergency room. The data on arrival and patient code blues from EMS were double, said Adkiri. Code blue refers to a patient who needs immediate resuscitation. When emergency medical services personnel were able to reach patients, they resisted going to the hospital, he said, and when they got to the hospital, they didn't want to stay. A lot of people will be like, whoa, I'm not being admitted, I'm just here to be checked out, said Adkiri. Patients also fear taking up space. They were said, we know you're doing so much to take care of the coronavirus patients, we just didn't want to take up your resources, Aiken said. Obviously, COVID circumstances dominated their decision to come in or not. A handful of diseases in Louisiana were among the biggest killers among the unattributed deaths. Another early analysis of data from March 1st through April 25th, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, found during the week ending April 11th, Louisiana deaths related to diabetes was 63% higher than the average weekly deaths in January and February. Flu and pneumonia deaths were 20% higher. Other respiratory disease deaths were 26% higher, and cerebrovascular deaths caused by things such as stroke and heart disease deaths were up 11 and 8%, respectively. Deaths related to Alzheimer's increased by 51%. For those with loved ones in memory care facilities, it is a sobering rise, but not altogether surprising given the change in routine and abrupt end to visitation. Annette Chapman, a retired Lafayette school teacher, used to visit her parents, who both have dementia, every day. She would take her 90-year-old mom for ice cream and help pick out coordinating colors to crochet small pocket purses for other residents. She tracked her 96-year-old father as he checked out on every room from his wheelchair, what she said was for her father going to work. We'd have a bright colored cap on him because he'd go down the hall, said Chapman, just checking on everything. Now, amid the restrictions and greater level of isolation aimed at slowing down the spread of the disease in nursing homes, her father bravely gets out of bed for 15 minutes per day. He's landed in the emergency room twice and the hospital once for bladder infections and dehydration. Chapman used to coax him to drink water, since his thickened liquid diet doesn't provide much hydration. Her mother has stopped crocheting and can rarely form a full sentence when Chapman calls. When she tried to visit them through the window, it confused her mom even more than her absence had. She couldn't understand why her daughter had to stay outside. Her parents have been spared infection, but restrictions have taken a heavy toll that Chapman fears will only continue to mount. I know that trying to keep them isolated keeps them healthy physically, she said, but there is more than one way to kill a person. Vulnerable people like Chapman's parents are increasingly at risk as the pandemic continues. Studies of excess deaths back to the 1918 flu pandemic showed that effects on public health lasted decades, according to study author Dr. Stephen Wolfe, an epidemiologist and professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. If millions of Americans miss chemotherapy sessions during the pandemic, the price they pay is not immediate, said Wolfe. I'm especially concerned about children living through a kind of trauma they may be dealing with for years to come. What will be the consequences in terms of physical development, emotional well-being, and risk for chronic disease later in life? And as federal unemployment comes to an end in July, Wolf is worried so-called deaths of despair, overdoses, suicides, and chronic conditions exacerbated by loneliness and stress will rise alongside deaths due to diabetes and heart disease. We were concerned about lives lost from the virus itself, but we're also very attuned to the possibility of the shutdown. People losing jobs, other economic strains would have its own death toll, said Wolf. People struggling would now have even more reasons for despair, and this problem could grow far worse. Aiken estimated the emergency department at University Medical Center is getting to normal at about 75% of what it was before COVID-19. But looking at the studies on excess death, he said they align with what we saw in April. He worries the increase in hospitalizations seen in Louisiana across the U.S. will reverse the trend. I'm really hoping people don't go back to fears they had to come to the emergency department for the urgent care they needed, he said. And now we turn to a couple of sports stories, choices to be made. SEC Commissioner Sankey pegs late July for decision on football session by Brooks Kubena, staff writer. The Southeastern Conference announced it will wait until late July before it makes a decision on the fate of its football season, said League Commissioner Greg Sankey. Makes it clear that circumstances of the coronavirus pandemic must improve. The SEC's 14 athletic directors and members of the league staff met Monday morning into the late afternoon discussing, among other topics, the possible scheduling options for athletic competitions in the fall. The meeting held at the league's headquarters in Birmingham, Alabama, was the first in-person meeting between the league's athletic directors since the SEC men's basketball tournament in March, an event that shut down after one day of play because of COVID-19. Several conferences and colleges have delayed or outright canceled their fall athletic schedules, decisions made during the nation's recent surge in new coronavirus cases. But the SEC is among 3 of the 5 major football conferences that is still buying more time for such a decision. It is clear that current circumstances related to COVID-19 must improve, and we will continue to closely monitor developments around the virus on a daily basis, Sankey said in a news release. In the coming weeks, we will continue to meet regularly with campus leaders via video conferences and gather relevant information while guided by medical advisors. We believe that late July will provide the best clarity for making the important decisions ahead of us. July timeline remains consistent with Sankey's comments last week, which he outlined in the wake of the Big Ten's conference Thursday decision to cancel its non-conference schedule and play league games only. The news seemed to indicate the direction of major college football, but among major conferences, only the Pac-12 conference has joined the Big Ten and canceling its non-conference schedule. The Atlantic Coast Conference announced that although it was waiting for a final decision on the season, the league will not play any exhibitions or regular season games in any sport until September 1st. The Big 12 Conference's leadership also declared it was waiting for a clearer picture on where the COVID-19 trend would be in the fall. The consensus between the ACC, Big 12, and SEC was that the Big 10 and Pac-12 have acted too soon. But Sankey still said that the current state of the pandemic was unsettling. In an ESPN radio interview on Saturday, Sankey said the concern about the feasibility of playing football is high to very high. By Monday, Sankey made it clear that a decision on the SEC's football season hinges on whether there will be a positive trend in public health. We have to see a change in public health trend to build the comfort that we'll have an opportunity to complete this fall, Sankey told ESPN's Paul Feinbaum on Monday evening. There were 60,469 new cases of coronavirus and 312 deaths in the United States on Sunday, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Protection. It was the 4th day in the previous 5 that there were 60,000 or more new cases, a benchmark the nation had never passed until last Wednesday. The SEC has members in 11 states, and 7 have 40,001 or more COVID-19 cases this year, the highest category in the CDC's database. The increase of cases in the region in the past 3 weeks is not a positive factor, Sankey told Feinbaum, though he said the league will analyze similar data before it reaches a final decision on the season. I'm done with predictions. I'm done with models, Sankey said. We're going to look at facts, and that's what we've been doing diligently for months now, and will do over the next few weeks. Meanwhile, Louisiana reported 1,705 new coronavirus cases on Monday. The state's recent spike in cases led Governor John Bel Edwards to order a statewide mask mandate on Saturday. Things are going to have to improve and get better, but we have time, LSU Athletic Director Scott Woodward said. This thing has had trends that go up and down, and hopefully they'll go down and people will take what's going on seriously, because if not, it's going to be difficult for us to safely play these games. LSU has begun a skills return to learn activities, to team activities, which began Monday under NCAA guidelines. Schools can now spend up to 8 hours per week on weight training and conditioning, and can also arrange 2 hours per week of film study. Starting July 24th, teams can also hold walk-through practices with footballs and in-person meetings. Woodward said, I'm still planning like I'm playing opening weekend, a sentiment that he said was shared by most of the athletic directors who attended Monday's meeting. If teams can play, they'll play, Woodward said, but they'll have to listen to the health experts and go forth from there. And in our final news item of the morning, and sports related, willing to find a way, area volleyball coaches remain confident the season can still happen by Kevin Foote, sports and staff writer for The Advocate. The bulk of the conversation about high school fall sports revolves around football, but there are coaches and athletes in other fall sports also hoping to avoid losing seasons because of the coronavirus. So what about an indoor sport like volleyball? 3 of the top volleyball coaches in Lafayette Parish, Ascension Episcopal's Jill Braun, St. Thomas More's Jessica Burke, and Turling's Catholics Terry Abear, maintain that playing volleyball is realistic at some point during the upcoming fall semester. I definitely think it can happen, Burke said. A couple of charges here and there, and I definitely can see it happening. There are several fundamental protocols necessary. For one, more volleyballs will be used during matches and likely fewer balls used during pregame practice sessions. Each ball will then be sanitized during each dead ball situation. That's something that's very doable for our sport, Braun said. Another suggestion is to put a screen on the nets, some kind of clear plastic, so there's no breathing on opposing players through the nets, Braun said. Teammates would sit in every other chair on the bench. All 3 said they feel the Acadiana area volleyball coaches would be willing to make concessions to get the sport played. I think within reason, everybody's thinking whatever we need to do to play, let's do it, Abear said. I don't think I've heard anything that's just washing their hands on the season already. Cooperation and flexibility among the coaches would be required. Our coaches associations are very, very strong, Braun said. I think lower income schools have means to put things into place. I think coaches in our area will be willing to think outside the box to make things work. In general, I think coaches will want the kids to play. In Aber's case, I've got 7 seniors. I would hate to see them miss out on their last year. Baseball, softball, and track athletes lost out on their seasons in the spring. While volleyball has the disadvantage of being an indoor sport, it does have advantages elsewhere, with Louisiana High School Athletics Association Executive Director Eddie Bonine saying Monday that high school games can't be played until the organization reaches phase 4 of reopening. A volleyball season can be put on fast forward, whereas football can only play once a week. If we had to play 3 or 4 matches a week to get the season in, we could easily do that, Abear said. Originally, volleyball practice was slated to begin August 10th, the regular season set for August 31st, and the state tournament in Kenner on November 12th through 14th. Conflicts with gym space with basketball is an issue for a lot of schools like at Turlings. Ascension's Braun, meanwhile, is blessed to coach at a school with a large gym with two-sided bleachers, so we'll be able to accommodate fans safely with social distancing, and I'd be willing to host all home games if I have to in order to keep social distancing. Unlike football, Burke said volleyball doesn't depend on much as on fan support to finance its existence, so the volleyball season could go on without fans. ABR said his team would be willing to play without fans or even play home games on other campuses if that's needed to give parents the opportunity to see their kids play. Another major reason all three coaches are optimistic, volleyball could be played in the success of camps and limited club play in recent months. Braun said summer camps have continued without one single camper testing positive. The few teams that did play club volleyball, even out of state, have done so without incident. Aber said a couple of his players have headed to Orlando, Florida this week to compete in a national club volleyball event. And that wraps up the news, the headlines, the sports, and all the other items that we bring to you each and every Monday through Friday morning from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. I went a little bit over my time limit today, but not much, to get in every bit of news so that you will be informed. This service is offered free to the public every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. through AOC, your open access channel here in the Acadiana area. We are more than happy to bring you the news to share with our visually impaired community and with members in our community who do not have access to a newspaper or the news cycle. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer reader, it's very simple. Go to our website, AOC Inc., that's AOCINC.org. Look up under forms, applications, fill out the application or form to become a volunteer newspaper reader and join our wonderful family of readers. That's been basically myself for the last few months during the pandemic because I'm set up at home to do so. But we can always include others to do so as well, as long as you have a computer or technology to be able to record remotely or to read the news live remotely. As always, this is Bruce Cohen, has been Bruce Cohen, and I implore you to be safe and healthy and also to wear masks when you're out in the public. And that's all I've been reading about this morning because of the mandate set down by our governor. But please, 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 when you're out in the public, please adhere to the mandate. Wear your mask, wash your hands, sanitize. Please, let's stop the spread. Let's make sure that Louisiana is one of the very first states to level out and get us back to where we need to be. We appreciate your support and help in this effort. As always, be kind to each other and have a great day.